By the historians Simon Sharma and David Starkey, the editor of The Lady magazine, Rachel Johnson, and by Martin Bashir, who interviewed Princess Diana on the troubles in her marriage with Prince Charles. Assuming they can avoid the trap of the Welsh elections, this is going to be...
or indeed Tristram Hunt.
This is going to be a very different event from 30 years ago, isn't it?
Very definitely. I think that what's striking about it is we've been through all that before. And also, of course, she's very different. We forget Diana Spencer behaved as though she'd come from California. She was, in fact, the daughter of one of the very grandest of English noble families, the kind of family that rather looks down on the royal family as Harry Weast. So that was still in an older tradition. This, I suppose, really is the monarchy embracing democracy. I mean, after the last time we've had, dare I say it, as humble a relation of the royal family as Kate's mother will be, is Queen Elizabeth I, who had a Smith for a cousin.
I knew David wouldn't let this go without Elizabeth
I knew we'd get back
I'm trying to make you feel familiar with a little bit of history.
Yes, no, one chewed up a Newsnight, David. That's your ration.
We have changed too, haven't we? I mean, I'm looking at the tweets and the blogs already. There are some people who are very cynical about this. Oh, I'm bored with it already.
Yes, well, there was somebody who I saw on the blog who said, right, I'm going to go polish my bunting. But he was actually jumped on by, 14 lovely housewives in Darlington and said, please, don't be such a moaning whiner. I think what's actually very interesting, David's right, is Kate so different from Diana. Diana was so nervous and ingenuous and didn't know what she was getting into. The remark I love about Kate Middleton, when they were going out together at some point in the 8 years or whatever it was, she said, well, he's very lucky to be going out with me. And actually, that is an issue. We don't know the crucial issues, like the catering, for example. If it's going to be a celebration, I'm only half joking. The tricky thing, which the papers will be full of, is how resplendent will it be? Everyone's happy for it to be a celebration in the midst of recession. The trick is not to make it disgustingly ostentatious.
So in other words, the real trick is going to be where it will be held. Yeah. Obviously not St. Paul's, complete with the mother's engagement ring and St.
not
Paul's.
The Abbey. You and I wouldn't put
I would not have the Abbey.
Me neither.
It seems to me that...
What would you have, a small country church?
No, I would have the chapel. I would have the Chapel Royal at St. James's, where royal weddings always used to be held until the 20th century.
Rachel, I mean, these different times do call for a different kind of celebration, do they?
Well, I think we're not going to see an austerity wedding.
No.
But what we might see is, rather than a big, society wedding, we'll see a big society wedding. In which, guests are invited to give donations to the Prince's Trust, and the dinner's catered by Duchy Originals, and he invites guests, which is now, of course, Waitrose. But we see people from all walks of life. I mean, what I thought David said was interesting. I don't think this is a marriage between the royal family and democracy. I see this much more as the royal family marrying the middle class. It's a way of the middle class is the biggest class there is. It's the biggest demographic. It's the class that the royal family has to keep on pleasing. And with Berkshire's Rose, Kate Middleton joining the firm, we have seen England allying itself properly with the middle class for the first time. They used to ally with Germany, and now it's something different.
Let me bring in Martin Bashir. Martin, I mean, is that the thing that most strikes you, how different these two women, Diana and Kate, are?
I think it does, and by the way, I really wish I was in London today because aside from the beginning of the Six Nations Rugby Internationals, this is a fabulous day in all kinds of ways. But what I would say, what I'm interested in is the fact that when William's mother married, she was 20. Barely 20. She hadn't been to university, and she was marrying a man who was 31, who'd been to Cambridge, read archaeology and history, had started with the Royal Air Force and then settled into a career in the Royal Navy. Kate and William have actually had very common experiences, shared experiences. And you were talking earlier about the cynicism that's abroad concerning this nuptial and this forthcoming wedding. I think there are reasons to be relatively optimistic. They've shared the education experience, they've shared their intellectual development, and I think to some extent they've spent a considerable amount of time together preparing for this experience. You'll remember that when Diana came into the royal family, it was extremely difficult.
What do you make, Martin, though, of the ring? The fact that Diana will be there one way or another in spirit, will be there because of this ring, which I'm sure some people will find very romantic. Other people might think is a little bit odd.
I think it's a mark of the young man's affection for his mother, and it speaks to the fact that she was a loving parent. Everybody knows that the late princess was no academic, she was no great thinker, but she was a loving mother. And I think that William's desire to share that ring in the way that he has speaks to both his affection for his mother and his affection for his fiancée.
Yeah, I mean, I think Martin's right. It will be a sort of an exorcism of the anguish, the incredible sort of epic anguish of the Diana-Charles wedding and the Diana's death, really. There are two difficulties, I think. One is that Diana may indeed be, the ghost showing up for the celebrations. And I think the other difficulty, we ask the royal family to do two things which are really difficult to put together. One is be this great, a sort of cheer-up panacea for our tough times, to be an emblem of Britishness, of optimism and the community coming together. On the other hand, we want them just to actually be a loving couple. And with, Diana came a cropper. It was impossible just to be a loving couple when she was all at sea being Mistress Britain.
That's part of it, isn't it? We want them to be like us, and we want them also to be different from us, and we want the big show. The two things are quite difficult to steer you.
I think it is going to be hard pulling off a massive international televised celebration in the middle of a recession when the VAT cuts will be coming in. And
have smaller sandwiches.
Sandwiches, and where are you going to have it? And we'll have to have an English dress designer. I mean, there are ways of PRing this which will make it work.
Do you think, though? We're talking about whether this will cheer us all up or not. I mean, it's very good news for the government, isn't it? Because
it's very good for the Tory. It's very good for the Tory government.
It will be deadly if it's seen as being hijacked politically. That would be an absolute. In fact, I thought Cameron was much too political in what he said. And if the government if the government seems to hijack it, that will be a catastrophe.
There's an appetite for good news, isn't there?
And of course there's an appetite for good news.
Well, it's Act 1 of the good news, Gavin. Here's the thing, actually. We have unforced moments. We have the Queen's, Golden Jubilee coming out after that. Who knows, if everybody plays their card right, Harry might get married in 2012 and have a clear run of 3 years where we're just quite happy to be British.
Martin Bashir, when you heard Prince Charles today saying that they've been practicing long enough, and it did recall that comment about love, whatever love means, didn't it? From 30 years ago. I just wondered if you felt, given your interview with Diana, that there was still some little niggling thought about, could this be a generation that is skipped because Prince William is more photogenic or different? Do you think there's anything in that at all?
It's very difficult to say. I would take up the point, however, just now about the late Princess Diana's ghost being present. It's worth remembering that at the marriage of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, they included in the service a prayer from the 1662 Book of Common Prayer in which they acknowledged their sadness over what had happened in the past. And you'll remember, and I quote, "We acknowledge and bewail our manifold sins and wickedness which we from time to time have committed by word, thought and deed." And I think to some extent there was a sense of repentance and regret expressed in the Prince of Wales's marriage to Camilla, which I think marks that period off. And I do think that this is, in many ways, a fresh start, an opportunity for these two. He has certainly not been cajoled into marriage in the way that the Prince of Wales was, and I think there's a sense in which he's doing this in full control of his faculties and at his own time.
Part of the genius of the monarchy has been to reinvent itself at different times. And this is part of that.
Well, but it's also a continuation. The real reinvention is 1917, when the House of Windsor is carved from the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, and the Kaiser makes the wonderful remark he was looking forward to performance of the Merry Wives of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And that's the point at which they stop marrying German princesses and start marrying English women, like Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the future Queen Mother. But this, as Rachel was saying, is going down a step or two or three and reaching out, I think, actually slightly beyond the middle classes. For somebody who's been a royal mother-in-law has been a flight attendant.
There's the sense above
something
all
really extraordinary.
Sense above all that being a royal doesn't necessarily preclude you from falling in love and being simply happy.
I don't think. I feel that the wedding of Charles and Diana is very much present in this choice and in the way this announcement has been orchestrated. Because what I think we're invited to think by Prince Charles's comment, you know, they've been practicing long enough, but then Camilla's delight is the fact that she's not posh. They haven't just met. It's not a dynastic alliance between the royal family and one of the great English houses. This is a love match. And for all those reasons, she's not going to stand by and watch if Prince William misbehaves, as, dare I say it, Princess Diana was expected to do, because that is how the upper classes behave.
We don't have much time left. The royal family needs this to be a success, don't they?
And it's very likely, because of course they've got their separation over first. They actually parted first, and then they discovered that not only did they like each other, they couldn't live without each other. Which seems to me to be
my friend David was a marriage guidance counsellor.
Why I'm a good historian, Simon. I can judge people other than myself.
Yes, a man of many parts. They need this success.
They need this success. But as David was saying, the royal family has done very well by pretending to change, but by remaining in power with remaining just as rich as it always has been. Long may it continue.
All right.
We say it, the lady.
Thank you all very much.